Welcome back to the VoIP Users Conference. We're in our 6th year, VUC.me. Our thanks to Voxeo Labs for their support. They do Tropo.com. Go get an account there and see what it's like. Very easy to develop VoIP applications. Sangoma.com, makers of hardware and software for VoIP. We already know that Michael White from E4 Strategies is the smartest working guy in VoIP. You can reach him at e4strategies.com. Our friends who used to be called Junction Networks are now onsip.com. They do our hosted PBX, and they should be doing yours. I'd like to also thank David Frankel, zipdx.com, the full-featured, full-color, wideband, fantastic conference bridge. And thanks to Voxbone, voxbone.com, for providing dial-ins at local rates in 48 cities across the world. And guess what? Welcome to the VUC for something like August 31st. You know that this is number 399. James, did you know that? In other words, next week it'll be 400. All right, let's pass. I'm sorry to wake you up. We've got Frederick Dickey with us from Sangoma. That's why I left their slide up. And I don't think I'm going to show myself today because I have some incredible lag, and we'll have to look into what that is. I'll give you a real thrill here with one quick view of myself. So, James, you were going to say something before Fred gets started?
No, I wasn't. I was trying to answer your question.
Okay, and what was the answer?
Well, what I said was, where the heck is the mute button? Because I've muted myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It would seem that we're okay, though. So, again, I'm going to put the logo on, or this. Let's see, what is this? No, that's no good. We'll put this on. And again, Frederick, thanks for joining us again. We hope to have you around every couple of months, at least.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. Not often, but we had a few recent participants. Last time was Julian, I believe.
That's right.
Came in and talked about our Link appliance.
That's right. And might want to show that great wall that you've got behind you and the wonderful shirt before we get started with the slides.
For some reason, I'm trying to go back to showing my video, and
clicking on screen share doesn't work. There we go.
There you go.
Look at that, folks. That is
so
absolutely fantastic. There we go.
So I tried to match the backdrop here. All right. So thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure.
All right. So shall I go directly? I guess I have a few slides here. I know last time I participated, I believe I came in and I talked about our high-density boards, the 16 T1E1 boards. And I guess at the time there was a request or a willingness to understand more about the Vega series, and I guess we should have really done this much earlier because it's about a year now that Sangoma has acquired a UK company called Vega Stream. And you know, so we've been integrating and aligning the product roadmap since then, and that allows us to offer a bunch of new products, you know, very different than our traditional business, and you know, which was to sell boards into open source telephony systems. And so this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to, you know, introduce the group to our Vega series of Vega portfolio of voice over IP gateways.
Excellent.
All right. So let me just switch page here. So with this acquisition came a lot of products, actually. Maybe a quick history. Vega Stream was founded back in 1998. Where I'm not sure I'm not sure that SIP was probably still just starting. So in those days, H.323 was kind of the norm for voice over IP protocols. But that just to say that the code base, if you will, of these platforms have evolved since about 1998. So very mature feature set, very stable, very feature rich. You know, lots of deployments and interrupt situations, whether it's H.323 or with SIP. So you know, these are not like prototypes or early releases. They are designs and code base that have seen a lot of deployments over the years. But the first series of product that we have is what we call the Vega 50. It used to be called the Europa, but since we think this is a global product, we dropped that. I know it was not named after the continent, but still we wanted to give it a global flavor. So this is a low density board, a low density gateway. There's various combos that I'll go through, but they support either a number of BRI lines, or they support a combos of and mixes of FXO or FXS analog lines. So that's low density. This is more like a desktop, tabletop type installation for small enterprises. We have the Vega 5000, which is this picture here. The second picture from the top is a rack mountable unit that supports all the way up to 50 analog FXS ports. So these gateways get to see deployments mostly in large campuses where you may have like an enterprise soft switch that is used to convert a bunch of analog lines onto SIP lines in a large PBX, but also you know, large campuses, you know, whether it's student dorms, or we have a lot of deployments in the with Army installations where you have lots of buildings over large geographical spaces. So some buildings don't get converted right away to SIP lines, but with this gateway they can take up to 50 analog lines and make them look like there's just SIP phones and integrate them with the rest of the dial plan of the company. So this one is a big seller for us, especially in Asia Pacific, where we have thousands of these guys deployed alongside with in networks that use the Cisco call manager. But more recently, we've been working with a university in Michigan where they use Asterisk, and especially for student dorms, they're keeping the analog lines. Then we have the next three boxes are the Vega 100, 200, and 400. So these are you know, digital T1, E1. The 100 with a single span, the 200 with two spans, and the 400 with four spans. The 100 and 200 they come with fixed capacity, so there are no, you buy them, they give you 30 ports or 60 ports of gateway sessions. The 400 we sell as a licensable unit, so it comes with all the hardware and the DSPs that you need to service up to 120 calls, but we can license it starting from 8 ports. So you can grow from 8, 9, you know, from port to port or span to span, all the way up to 120 calls. So so this one adds a lot of flexibility to deployments when customers are not too sure what capacity they'll need. So this is the extent really of the Vega series, you know, going from low density analog, high density analog, and I guess higher density digital. All right. All these gateways come with very specific features that are different from a lot of gateways out there. You know, in terms of protocols, SIP is very common. We can work on H.323. We can't do both at the same time, but we can flip the firmware to switch from SIP to H.323. We support the security, encryption of the SIP messages and the voice over IP media. So that's pretty common. The second one here is every model of our gateway come with dual Lan ports, and it's not necessarily for a failover mechanism, but more for service providers that or very large companies that prefer to keep the management traffic separate from the voice traffic. So typically they'll use one of the port to carry the voice traffic, and the other port to access the device for management and configuration. So this is a feature that service providers and larger corporations really like. Management features, so comes with web GUI. If you prefer to work with CLI, that's fine. Various protocol for management and billing. There's, as every gateway, powerful routing capabilities, ability to do firmware upgrades and dual images. Should the firmware upgrade fail, you can always revert back to the old image. Vocoding, so again, very, very standard to any gateway. Vocoding, echo cancellation, fax relay. One point that is important is some gateways out there, depending on the features you're using, there's not enough DSP to serve the amount of calls. So in our case, you always have whether the mix and match of various features you're using, you're still going to have enough DSP capabilities for all the announced port counts. And then I have a feature that is really powerful. I have a use case later that explains this, but it's called the Enhanced Network Proxy feature. So the ability to register SIP phones inside the gateways and provide a failover mechanism should you lose the primary registrar. So I'll talk about that. This is a neat feature that provides more redundancy and robustness of deployment.
Frederick, can I ask a question?
Sure.
No one else is, but one comes to mind immediately, which is, suppose I'm working in this area and I've never used this hardware series before, any of these gateways.
Yeah.
And the boss says, okay, here's your budget, go crazy, and I'm going to buy one. Tell us a little about the learning curve. How do you, the package comes from UPS or whatever.
Yes.
And what happens then?
Yes. So it will come with a quick start guide that will guide you how to start. But there's a few things that we've done to simplify. Gateways, even if they're the most mature, I would say, voice over IP gear out there. They're kind of the first things that came around. They are complex, okay, and it's not right. Because they are complex because mapping the good old PSTN to voice over IP is not that simple, despite what a lot of people think. There's protocols, but there's also a lot of media processing and things like answer supervision and tones, and varies from country to country and varies. So what we've done is when you open up, when you power up the unit and you enter the admin panel, we have what we call a quick config guide. And in general, you'll step through about 4 or 5 levels of questions, like what country are you in kind of question, and we'll probably get you a functional gateway about 80% of the time. Then there's another set of interface that you have on the GUI where you can we call it expert config, where now you can go in and if you want to do very special things like call failovers or stripping digits, adding prefix digits, very specific parameters, then you can dig down. But in general, you can get going very quickly. There's also other things that that our customers do is you can upload configuration files. So let's say you not for one-offs, but if you're a carrier and you're planning to deploy a lot of these gateways, then you can have them wake up to download a configuration file that will just configure it. But before you build that config file, you still have to build that config file, but that's an example where you can simplify deployment. And then we have also a lot of these gateways are used with IP PBXs, and we provide, for instance, some of these PBXs provide provisioning templates where the PBX installation will take you through a few steps to define your gateway. It will spit out a config file that you then can import into that gateway. So there's a few things to simplify, but I can't say that every case is going to be up and running in a few minutes. It really depends on the deployment. So I hope that does that answer. Yeah.
Absolutely. And there's another question. I was watching IRC. James answered it, but the question was about codec support, specifically HD. In the list 711, 729, 723, and GSM.
Yeah.
I guess the implication was, is there G722 or anything else wideband? And James's answer is it's not really aimed at an HD market. So.
Well, it's not aimed at that, and also, I mean, you have a. I think personally that the HD codecs make sense once you start having IP end-to-end. So when you have a gateway like this that will just convert the call to G711 on the other side, on a 64K channel, there's no point really. You're going to fall back to the lowest common denominator. But when you'll see, maybe on other sessions, when we talk about our transcoding gateways or our coming SVC products, there, we start talking about HD codecs. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
There's another question from PhoneBuff, by the way, on the 5,000 mile model. Excuse me. Are the two FXO ports passed to the IPVX, or are they there for failover only? It's a pretty good question, actually.
Yeah, they're both actually. You set it up so if you want, you can configure it so that they become a simple metallic connection for FXS port 1 and 2 if you lose power, or if you want them to be full-fledged FXO ports. So let's say an installation where you have this FXS gateway registering all these FXS ports to an IPPBX, and you lose that IPPBX. So one of the things we can do is if you just use the relay function, then your first two FXS lines will just connect directly to the PSTN, as if the loop terminated on that phone. Or if you want, you could use what we call this ENP feature, where all the phones would be registered, if you will. They would stay registered inside the gateway, and you'd have like a mini PBX kind of running, so all the FXS lines could phone each other with like a 3-digit or 4-digit extensions, and can also access the two FXO lines. Lots of contention, I guess, but you'd still have two FXO lines to get out to make calls outside. So it acts as both. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Vega 100. So this kind of goes a bit more into details, but the Vega 100, you see there's lots of RG45. Do you see? By the way, I'm not sure. Do you see my mouse moving? Is that part of that?
It's a very small pointer, but we can see where you are. Yeah.
Okay, so we see all these connectors here. There's two rows of RJ45. So the bottom row is for your active connection, and the top row becomes active if you lose power. There's a relay inside that trips and provides a metallic connection. So you can use these gateways with another gateway in case you have a PSU failure. I'll get into the details more, but the 100 is based on the same hardware as the 400, so that's why you have all these connectors. But in effect, only port 1 and its failover friend here are activated. The three other ones are not activated, and the IP side is limited to that 30 port. Okay, the 200, it's just it's just the same thing, but it uses the first two at the bottom here, as well as their two friends upstairs here for the power failures. Okay, so that's going to support up to 2 T1s or E1s worth of traffic, with the IP traffic coming out on one of the LAN ports. The Vega 400, so that's the one that's fully populated. You see here, there's a little door. I mentioned the DSP, so there's a little door where we can insert DSP cards depending on the capacity that you want to use it. So again, so this 400 will use all these 4 ports at the bottom row for the 4 E1s or 4 T1s, and all these ports upstairs will be used in case of a failover. Okay, so not so 100, 200, 400, same platform. They're just loaded with different firmware depending on their use. Okay, so the 400 is completely open and licensable by software. So some of the speeds and feeds, so I mentioned maturity. So lots of different protocols on the E1 side. Whether you're using network protocols or line-side PBX protocols. Same for T1 with the variants of ISDN from the AT&Ts and DMS variants, as well as the line-side PBX protocols like QSIG and CAS. It can be, we include this. This is a neat feature, pin switching. So if you're using, depending if you're using this as a network termination, or network terminal, or as an end terminal, you don't have to buy different cables from us. We can switch the TX and RX pairs, so that you don't have to buy like crossover or whatever type of cable you need, depending on the way you turn the gateway. So this is pretty practical as well, because we ship when we open up the box, like you asked the question, all the cables are in there for the T1s and E1s. So we don't have to provide different sets of cables. So that's common to all of the 100, 200, 400. That's the DSP modules. So we have these little PCM CIA boards that can be ordered depending on when you switch. It's basically per span. So depending on what you need, you'll insert. So there's 2 slots in the back, and we have boards that have 1 DSP modules, and we have boards that have 3 DSP modules that will serve all the capacity that you need in terms of DSP processing. Okay, so if you start with a unit that is only lit for one E1, then you can grow all the way to 4 by ordering licenses and these little PCM CIA boards.
Can I just ask a question in here, please?
Sure.
Now, just looking at a use case here, if let's say you've got a company that has something of an old, antiquated PBX, but they don't want to spend any money replacing that, even with an IP PBX,
yes,
because it works.
Yes.
Can you then, let's say they've got 4 E1 or T1 lines, doesn't really matter, feeding this PBX. Can you take one of these modules, plug those E1 or T1 lines into this, and convert everything to IP, and then push that off onto the network somewhere? Yeah,
that is one of the main use case where a legacy PBX. So legacy PBX is either working perfectly, no reason to upgrade, or there's no budget yet, or whatever, but want to benefit from the added flexibility or the cheaper rates that you can get by adding a SIP trunk. This is a typical use case, where you can use the gateway as a network termination facing that PBX, and on the back end going to a SIP trunk. Okay, so if you've got that set up like that, and then you want failover on the gateways locally, will that still work? Yeah. So what you could do, let me. Oh, actually, that's the next slide. So this is what you would do, right? So if you so instead of being from the telco here, this would be your PBX, right? This unit would be configured as a network termination, driving the T1s or E1s into that PBX. And if the PSU fails on this first unit, there's relays inside that will trip and give you a metallic connection all the way up to a redundant failover unit on the bottom row. So right away, these T1s will be up and running because this is metallic here. This is just a relay that trips. Okay, so that's where you turn the unit towards a SIP network. But you could also, if you had an IP PBX that needed to branch out to the PSTN over T1s, you could turn these units the other way, if you will. You know, so PSTN to the telco with the SIP side facing the enterprise network. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right. So this is this redundancy. There's different scenarios you could run as well. So let's say that this is a similar case where you know, you have a legacy PBX here on the left, using, you know, T1s or E1s, no matter, going to the PSTN. So you could insert the Vega in the middle, still treating ISDN to ISDN traffic, and gradually, or maybe load balancing, or you know, a portion of your traffic going to a SIP trunk. So the way we do this is this kind of connectivity, where, you know, you'd use some of the active ports to face the left and right towards the enterprise and towards the carrier. Okay, and you kind of reconnect the ports, the failover ports onto themselves, fold onto themselves. So what happens is, if let's say you're switching to a SIP trunk, and you know, you want to test, or you're not sure of the robustness, or if it's going to be stable, you know, this is new stuff for a lot of enterprise. So you could insert the gateway like that. So in normal conditions, you know, the ISDN would go to the SIP trunk. But should you lose, you know, the SIP trunk, or lose power or whatever, then these relays would just simply provide you, you know, your good old connection that you had earlier on. So some form of a redundancy, as well as some form of a trend, you know, helping customers transition towards SIP trunking here. Okay, so that's another use case. The Vega 5000. So I believe I answered. So when I described the FXO, so it comes with 24 FXS or 50 FXS with the 2 FXO ports here that you see at the bottom. And these are either configured as fully functional FXO ports, like I mentioned, or they can be configured to become simple relays out of for the first and second FXS line. Some of the differentiators as well is this gateway has a very long loop length support, so all the way up to 8 kilometers. So when I describe, you know, these cases where large campuses or large enterprise or industrial complexes are migrating to voice over IP, but are not necessarily converting every endpoint to a SIP phone, sometimes they have like surprisingly long loops that are installed, especially like industrial, army compounds, and so using this gateway becomes very interesting. When I mentioned in Asia Pacific, we have deployed thousands of these gateways into in India, with the Army, in Air Force and Army of India, where they have these, you know, very large air base or army base with lots of buildings all over the place, and not everything gets converted. Like I said, in their case, it's a giant Cisco call manager deployment, and this gateway emulates the SIP phones perfectly. You know, it's been certified with the Cisco. But this is an example with Cisco, an example of a deployment that we've done. But it's very useful, you know, like I said, especially for these, you know, campus type, installations. Okay.
Yeah, Fred, this is James. Can I just point out something else that's quite useful about this particular bit of kit, and that is you can configure in the dial plan so that any emergency calls are routed out not over the SIP trunk, but come out on the FXO ports. So your emergency calling can be dealt with locally, whilst all of your all the rest of your outbound traffic goes out over the SIP trunk. And that's particularly useful in, well, you mentioned it, things like the student halls of residence or army camp, where you want to be dealing with emergency scenarios locally.
Yeah, very good point. There's always enough of a dial plan settings in a gateway where you can analyze digits and route the call depending on those digits, and not only in emergency situations but also as a fallback. So you can keep a few FXO lines, and should the central location where the call manager or the soft switch dies, then you can still make emergency calls. Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Yeah.
We have another question in IRC from Phone Buff. Is there a version with 24 to 50 FXO ports and maybe 2 to 8 FXS ports?
So on the 2 to 8 FXS, we'll get into that with the Vega 50. For the Vega 5000, we don't have a high capacity FXO gateway. In general, what we've seen is the use case for an FXO gateway is to front end. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's something I haven't, but in general, it's a front end, an IP PBX, where you need to branch out with a few FXO connections. So in general, my understanding is as soon as you get from your telco, your local telco, about 12, 14 FXOs. In the UK, I think you can go down to 8 FXO. It becomes cheaper to get a partial E1, a partial T1 from the telco. So we very seldom see the demand to get like 24 port FXO, because at that point it's cheaper for the end users to get a T1 or an E1 from their telco. But I love, I'm not sure, maybe there's use cases I haven't seen. I don't know if this is something that can be posted here, or if you want to contact me afterwards, that would be great. But yeah, so we don't have high density FXO. We have high density FXS only. And when I get to the Vega 50, we have low density FXO and low density FXS offered as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around that 50 FXO ports. I'm remembering our own installation where we had 2 lines, but yeah, that I'm not sure if Phone Buff, if you can. Okay, he says, look, I was trying to figure out why you would want that. Looking to slowly convert a large group of telco-centric lines to an IPv6. Makes sense.
Right, and I can give you another real-life scenario where I've actually used Vega streams. In a previous life. That was Project Athena, which was, bizarrely enough, the Canadian military welfare calling system out of Afghanistan. And what we did was we converted ISO containers into telephone calling booths for the Canadian Armed Forces. And the big advantage of using something like the Vega 5000 is that you can secure the relatively expensive Vega 5000 and other expensive bits in a secure, dustproof, weatherproof cabinet, and then only expose to the user end cheap and nasty analog handsets, which is great because they tend to get broken. And I recall it on one occasion there was a mortar bomb attack which managed to blow the VSAT dish over, and there was one Canadian guy who'd been queuing for about an hour and a half to make his phone call. He just got in and started making his phone call. The bomb went off, blew over the dish, and he ended up, in his frustration, he bayoneted the telephone. And but luckily for us, it was a $10 analog handset and not a $100 Cisco 7640 or something like that. So you can always replace the analog handsets quite cheaply.
Another example is hospitality, like hotels.
Yeah, where people steal the phones, don't they?
Yeah. So they might want, the cases might be, they need to update the PBX because they can no longer get any support on their old PBX, or they just want to do maybe offer IP maybe for the business centers, but keep analog lines throughout the building. So that's one way of converting, on-ramping all these analog lines and onto the IP, the voice over IP network. Yeah. That's the Vega 50, the low-density gateways. There's a bunch of combinations, of combos. For the FXS, we combine 4 or 8 FXS, always coming with the 2 FXO ports. So the use of these ports are same way as I described as before. So either as fully functional FXO ports, independent, or as fallback to the first and second FXS lines. We have FXO gateways for 4 FXO and 8 FXOs. So this is very common, in small PBX deployment. So typically, rule of thumb is, the one that I know anyways is about 4-to-1 ratio. So when you have about, 4 lines towards the PSTN, you'll be able to serve about 4 times the amount of users in the business. So a 4 FXO would typically serve 15, 16, 20 users. 8 FXO kind of double that. So, small and medium enterprise, very popular deployment, whether it's with open source PBXs or with, things like SNOM1 or 3CX, for the small enterprise. This is very, very, very common deployment. And then the counterpart to FXO, I guess, especially in Europe where BRI lines are so prevalent in interconnecting key systems and legacy small enterprise PBX. So in general, especially like countries like Germany, Italy, Netherlands, a lot of these lines, so they would replace their old key system with an IP PBX, and they need to branch out to the PSTN with a few BRI lines. So that's what these kind of gateways would provide, for offices that are, I don't know, under less than 40 people kind of thing. Okay, and I guess the scale doesn't show, but all these gateways are rack mountable 19-inch. The Vega 50 is more like tabletop, although we supply the angled brackets to mount them in 19-inch rack as well. Okay, same attributes, the FXO lines as failover and the dual Lan ports. Okay, so typical use case, we kind of describe this. So I can take a legacy PBX, TDM, front-end it with a gateway. Here I'm showing a Vega 400, but it could be any of our gateways, and then connecting to an ITSP over SIP trunk. So that's one use case, very, very common. I have to admit, in general, I would say, like in Europe, this is very prevalent. And for some reason, in North America, this is more prevalent. So it seems like more people are converting the PBX to an IP PBX, still branching out to the PSTN, even if SIP trunking is getting so much buzz, but we see this a lot. Anyway, so SIP trunking, but accessing a SIP trunk from a legacy PBX. I talked about this resilience features of the Vega 400. So if you lost your SIP trunk, or if you lost the power of the Vega 400, you could keep a PSTN connection. This is a PSTN trunking so PSTN branching out for IP PBXs. Okay, in our market we see a lot of the open source telephony, but just about any SIP-based PBX or even H323 for that matter can use these gateways to go out, with a legacy PSTN connection. Kind of a mixed mode here. We talked about maybe hotels. So if they get a new IP PBX, still connect with the PSTN, so get a gateway on that side, but also can use maybe lower density or high density FXS to hook up legacy phones. any enterprise, will have a few analog phones, maybe, I don't know, elevator phones or old door entry systems or speaker phones for the warehouse, so you always need to some degree to keep a few, maybe old faxes as well. You always need to interconnect a few FXS ports. So that's one way of covering for that. Here, the Vega 50 would register the phones to the IPPBX. Right?
Yeah, that's good point there, Fred, that the Vegas do contain T38 fax support. I think you mentioned that earlier, but it's worth emphasizing again. So you can do fax over IP.
So if you did fax over IP, so what would happen is your normal fax would come in PSTN, detecting the fax tone would convert the stream, turn off echo and turn the stream into T38. And then the Europa would take T38 back, convert it back to a regular T30 stream on an analog line. So you'd go back-to-back T38 to serve the legacy fax machines. The other possibility is some PBXs come with a T38 termination fax server, so you could route the T38 traffic to the PBX. It would terminate the fax and maybe create a PDF file or some image that would be emailed or something like that. But so legacy faxes possible, or you still need T38 here to convert and talk to this fax servers that would reside in the PBX. This is the, so I talked initially early on about the enhanced network proxy or resilience proxy. So here what we have is, you could have a bunch of IP handsets, and they could, through the broadband connection, simply, maybe it's a SIP dial tone, a SIP Centrex, an IP Centrex service provider. So all these phones, register through broadband to the hosted service. But if you lose, for some reason you lose the one connection, then you're left with nothing. So one of the things we can do with the Vega 50 or any of the Vega is to turn on this proxy registrar feature. So under normal conditions, the handsets would register through us. We'd in turn proxy register them to the service provider. And should you lose the connectivity for some reason, then the ENP feature would allow you to connect back, let's say, to these FXO ports I was talking about, failover FXO ports. But also these phones would be able to you're left with like a mini little PBX. So you'd still be able to call handset to handset, but they would also be able to call in a dynamic fashion, right? Not in a one-to-one mapping, but so you'd have two FXO ports for a number of IP handsets, and each of those could make outbound calls. Obviously, there's a lot more contention than what you need typically, but it would you'd still be able to make calls. Okay, so that's an interesting feature that we have as well. And that's kind of the end of my my slide deck.
Let's find out if anybody has any questions that have not been answered.
Yeah, anybody on ZipDX?
Okay.
That was a very comprehensive presentation, I have to say, Fred.
Thank you very much. One of the things, as I said, maybe we could have other sessions. One of the recent products we've introduced based on this Vega series is a session border controller. So where customers are fully IP, right? So they have an IP PBX and they want to go with a SIP trunk. So we've started offering products that are no TDM, I guess, and that's also a hot topic. SIP trunking. A lot of people are migrating to IP PBXs, and a lot of people are migrating to SIP trunking. That opens up a bunch of new problems to solve, if you will, for security. So we've announced back in May an SBC product. We're starting to ramp up, deployments, and that's also a very interesting new field for us. But
okay, one thing that I would say about these Vega boxes from personal experience is that they're brilliant building blocks that you can bolt together with other bits of kit to make more amazing bits and pieces. So, for example, going back to the Afghanistan scenario, we were actually using Vega, I think they were Vega 50s at the time, but using them with a channel compression box, which got the total bandwidth required to feed a Vega 50 down to something ridiculous like 128 kilobit per second. And we're running that back over a VSAT, a low-cost VSAT link. So yeah, hugely reliable and very effective. And you haven't actually mentioned price, Fred, but these things are not hugely expensive, are they?
No. So when you talk, just to give you a reference, at the retail price, the Vega 100 sells for $13.95 US, but through any of our distributors and resellers, you'll probably get a better price than that. And for two spans, we sell at $21.95, so $2,200 US. And when you talk about these 4 FXOs and 4 FXS, you're in the just a few $100s range. So, and these things just run. Actually, my wife has a small business. She used to have a good old Nortel Northstar key system, and about 6 months ago, we switched her office to 4 FXO lines on a Vega 50 with 3CX PBX and Yearling phones, and the thing has been running. You just don't have to do anything with it. It's just been running very stable and very cheaply. Could set up, ditch the old Northstar and use more recent technology for very affordable prices. Yeah,
so both affordable and easy to set up. What we haven't seen, and perhaps we could see on a future session, is have a look at the web interface, because it's very clean, it's very simple, and quite easy for relatively untrained people to use. I'm sounding a bit like a Sangoma Vega stream salesman, aren't I? And I'm not. I haven't laid my hands on a Vega for what, 10 years now?
Really?
Yeah.
So we need to help you there, but I would love to do that if the audience would like that. We could easily, especially the most recent release is called 8.8, and we've even simplified it even better. So when I talked about this quick config panel. Is even simpler than it was. So yeah, we could, if this is something that would interest the audience, it's something we could schedule for sure.
No problem. It's always interesting. Okay, well, that was, or is still, Frederick Dickey from Sangoma in the UK. Fred, come back again soon. I hope you will.
Perfect. I will, for sure.
Okay, we're going to take... Go ahead.
Sorry. We have lots of new products to talk about, so I'd be happy to do it.
I'm just getting
new toys. I want some new toys. Bring on the new stuff.
Sangoma just won one or several awards. I'm on a mailing list, and occasionally I get stuff, and there was some huge thing that just happened. So you guys have 1 million products. I remember when there were like a couple of cards years ago, and they were at that time, forgive me, Mark Spencer, but they were the best cards in the industry.
Still are. Still are.
All okay.
Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
All
Back
right.
in a minute with part 2, the mature audiences only. You just sailed through another edition of the VoIP Users Conference. We call it VoIP and Tell, or the VUC. Every Friday we meet at 12 noon Eastern. The site to find all the information is vuc.me. And here's a list of folks without whom this wouldn't be possible. starting with Voxale Labs and their very fine services from Tropo.com. You should go there and get yourself a free account. Check it out if you're at all into developing. Sangoma.com, also extremely highly thought of in this space. Junction Networks and their hosted PBX on SIP.com. E4 Strategies, Michael White is the hardest working guy in VoIP. ZipDX is our full-featured HD audio conference bridge, zipdx.com. And the newest addition to the VUC family, Voxbone.com, who have graciously added almost 60 incoming DIDs all over the world. Check that list out on the website. See you next week. Except no, you're going to see us now. You are going to see us now, but let me just kill the recording here. So now we are off the record. Should we end the broadcast?
Well, no, keep the broadcast.
Okay, let's keep the broadcast. People who want to see the broadcast can look at it directly to get into the end. Okay.
I've got something interesting to show with you.
Absolutely. With you. Let's go for it.
You know that Tim is in the desert?
Yes.
With his
with Priscilla of the desert, right?
Burning Tim of the man.
Burning Tim.
And you know, he loves to go around lecturing people about how wonderful his telephone system is. I've been trying ever since Sunday night to
reach him,
get through to Tim. I've had one call from him. And I must have sent about 200 SMSs and multiple phone calls. And let me demonstrate what happens when you try and call him. Listen to this.
Let's hear it. This is going to be great.
I should say, and running counter to your experience, I've spoken to Tim at least 4 times.
Yeah, well, what's the secret?
Really?
I don't know.
But not over an extended period of time, though. Oh, he keeps on talking.
Last weekend.
He was calling you though, wasn't he?
He was calling me, and then I would call him straight back, and it took him about 4 goes to get both inbound and outbound working correctly. But we did, in fact, over the course of last Sunday, get it all.
Okay. Well, let's try a live call. Here we go. Just listen to this.
This is going to be good. Hello.
Circuits are busy then. Error 85.
You hear that?
It's Allison.
Yeah.
It was Allison. But I have never got through to Burning Man.
Allison?
Yeah, well, that's Allison in the desert. She probably
Allison in the desert.
Allison.
The orange dress, the asterisk dress, and the shoes.
Yeah, so when he comes back out of that desert, I'm going to give him a hard time. But you say that you actually managed to call into the desert and got through to Tim, Michael.
Yeah, he was calling. He used my mobile. There were like 3 or 4 of us, I guess, that he was using as test targets last weekend, and must have been half a dozen times we spoke.
Right.
Now, and the way that they were doing it was quite interesting, because the first go round, his outbound caller ID was a Canadian caller ID, was from the Toronto area, and they changed it then, and their caller ID was Nevada based in the end.
Yeah, 702 number, isn't it, or something like that.
And then yeah. So, and he said that they had a sort of a Wi-Fi link back to their central ISP for Black Rock City. And then they had a 7 megabit symmetrical there was a long haul Wi-Fi link back to a nearby town or something like that. That the nearest cable company was giving them a drop, and it actually worked pretty well.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, the Hangout has now been completely disrobed in public. The kimono is open. Anyone in IRC could join us.
Okay. What's this super secret announcement thing then?
Well, that's Diana, or as you in the UK say, Diana.
Diana, my lovely Diana, friend
yes,
of
lovely Diana.
from Yate.
Absolutely, and she had a fantastic announcement to make, and I don't know what it was with.
I have to admit, I find Diana quite exciting, but only in a dangerous sort of way.
She's great. She's fun, but as I told her earlier today, she wakes up in the middle of the night to code or something too. So as I told her at 1 o'clock in the morning her time.
Yeah, I've learned not to go down to the pub with her because she gets a bit punchy when she's had a few.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, Randy. Thank you.
No problem. In fact, yes, we're talking about Diana from Yate. Trijet Scud. Diana, yeah, isn't that true though, James? You didn't say it, but I've heard it on TV shows. Diana. Yeah, Diana.
Diaphanous.
No? Is that a particular region, that accent?
Well, no, she's Romanian, isn't she?
No, I'm talking about Diana with an R on the end.
I think that would be more like a farmer myself.
Diana.
Oh, is that it?
Diana.
Right.
Andy, you're going to do some archers for us? You sound like you can...
There'd be no Floyds in here.
No, what was the guy? He's dead. He died from a chainsaw accident. Not Eddie Grundy, his dad.
You know more about radio full programs than I do.
You do, yeah. There's Lauren says there's a series of YouTube vids of Diana speaking where she shares some criticisms of other OS 11e projects. Yeah, to be done. I'm surprised.
That's right. Who dares criticize Yate? Oh, goes beat them up. No, she's lovely.
No, she's very nice. And the thing is, we were trying to get the dates, trying to get a date with Diana. But what's funny is nobody's Romanian here, right? So I can say this. You don't want to get them all together because there's all these little
niggly
wars going on. I know you know what I'm talking about, James. I don't know if
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So next week, and this is going to be great, by the way, Adrian from AG Projects, Blink, will be here blinking. I'm not sure what he's going to say, but I think he's going to talk about what they've been developing.
Yeah, I've just noticed that Adrian is going to Chicago to this WebRTC thing in Chicago. I don't know
really?
What it is.
Yeah, I did not know. Well, I hope he listened to our big conference the other
But then
day.
again, so has Tim.
Tim is going to that thing? Well, he would, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Tim of the
I saw
desert.
those Voxeo sending him over there and all that.
Tim of Arabia. Cool, your video is so out of sync, Randy, now.
No, it's like 20... Oh, yeah, I was drinking like 20 minutes ago. Hello. That is... Well, it got a little better for a second. It's true that I'm looking at the uplink on this thing. Maybe it's an Ethernet problem because the uplink is very slow. It's like 61K.
Are you still using your girly MacBook Air?
Yes, but normally it's very, very good. And look at this. My God, my mouth isn't even moving. It's getting worse and worse. It's kind of heating up, though. Let me see. Oh, yes, the whole thing's very hot.
But you mentioned earlier some form of interaction between the MacBook Air and the...
yeah.
Yeah.
The Android file transfer, yep. File transfer agent or whatever it is. Yep, absolutely.
And it's the sort of thing I've seen before, actually. It's not the first time I've heard about that, where systems ought not to interact, but they do.
Well, this is one of those things. I mean, it's a bug with the file transfer, apparently. You would think. Well, maybe it's a Mac. Maybe it's an OS X bug. But it looks to me more like as soon as I kill that app, everything works fine. So you would think maybe... I don't know. Let me see. Can I get into this thing if I go to Pages? Can you be in more than one Hangout? I thought you could, but I tried on my...
I don't think so. I don't think you can.
Tried on my Android. Not more than one Hangout. I meant twice in the same hang. Let's see. I'm not even seeing an invite. I'll have to invite myself.
Yeah, you can be in the Hangout more than one time. It just has to be multiple computers.
Look at this. Well, I'm on another computer, but you know what? I tried with the Android. It didn't work. And plus, I'll have to invite myself again, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it does work. I know it does. I've done it before.
Okay. And are you going to join us?
That's Leaf, isn't it?
Tell us about life, please. That's life. of That's Life fame.
That's Life.
And that's easy way to remember it.
But not as we know it.
No. Oh, you know
I'm
what?
playing Minecraft on my lunch break.
Okay, well, you can do that too. You know what? This is weird, but I'm not...
Don't know it.
That's John. Look, it's John.
Hey, John. I'm not getting the invite either, so what the hell? Oh, here we go. I shared my own post. Yeah, this is weird. I can't invite myself. Wait a minute. I can invite myself with the URL. I've done two really stupid things today. One was to program the conference for 11:45 p.m. and then wonder why it wasn't recognizing me. And the second was this. All right. Let's see if we can... Let me see if there's a difference. Maybe there will be. I'm not sure where the audio is coming from, but the video will be there. So here I am. 1, 2, 3. That's much better, huh? 4, 5.
Much.
6, 7, 8, 9. Wait, I didn't do that. Okay.
So where's the second stream coming from?
That's what she said, James. But other than that, it's the other computer. One.
So the slow one is on the girly MacBook Air.
Yeah.
You're just going to have to get yourself a proper man's
PC. Well, wait a minute. Look at this. Now, if I just kill the video here, we're good, right? Look at this.
You know, I just couldn't operate on a device with only 2 USBs. I mean, it's
that sucks. It really does suck. There's no question. Hello,
the only problem with that, of course, Randy, is that you've now killed the video on the one that takes focus, because that is the sound.
Oh, indeed. All right. Well, I can do it manually. 1, 2, 3. There's still a little bit of lag there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Let me see. How do I feed this back into my... Oh, I can't. Let's see if I push this button if it works. 1. Oh, kind of. Wait a minute. So I'm in 2 computers. Turn. Mute here. 1, 2. Oh, so I'm hearing myself. Too weird.
Yeah.
Oh no, you can't do that because then we won't hear ZipGX. Bloody hell.
You can't see what I'm seeing. I'm watching Ranes here putting in brand spanking new and very nice looking monitors onto the desk opposite me. And I'm thinking, that's a very nice new monitor. In fact, I'm surrounded by these nice new monitors. I've got this horrible kind of square old one, which you're on at the moment. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers, I suppose.
No, and if horses were beggars, beggars would ride. Or something.
Right, I'm mindful of the time. I'm watching the clock, and I've got about another 10 minutes before I start my running through the air for the train.
Mm-hmm.
Dodging the wheelchairs.
Are you going to take us through London again?
Well, do you want me to? I mean, once you've done it a couple of times, it kind of it's
true.
Not as good. I want to take you somewhere different, really.
Yeah, where can we go?
Well, what I'd like to do, in true Paralympic style, is go to the roof and attach myself to a zip line and go zipping across to the Tower of London.
That would be cool.
You'd enjoy that, wouldn't you?
We all would, yeah.
Yeah, but that won't be this week.
Okay. I suggest that with the exit of James, we kill this hangout, at least kill the broadcast part, and the hangout will stay if everybody wants to hang out, fine. Running through the air isn't that flying, Lauren says. Yeah, good point. Phone buff okay, you got that. The trouble with having 3 computers on with the same mouse is trying to find the cursor. Here we are. Okay, got it. Is anyone who's in IRC needs Fred's email? Let me know.
I don't know about his email, but
well, I'm not publishing it. It's just
my Sangoma top is now about 8 years old, and I use it for gardening, and I could do with a new one.
I don't think I understood that.
Those Canadian Sangoma branded tops, jacket things, are really good.
Top? What do you mean?
It's jacket. It's kind of like a fleecy thing, but with a zip at the top. Like a fisherman's smock.
A top, like
It's a French-Canadian thing, and it has a maple leaf on the sleeve. Looks very smart.
Okay, so I'm looking now at the video output on my thing that is feeding, that you're seeing now. Okay, so you can see my mouth, 1, 2, 3. That's the other computer on the same connection. So I'm just going to guess that the MacBook Air can't keep up for some reason, which is new because it was before. It used to.
Well, the MacBook Air doesn't have much processing power.
How is that? Who's going to get the echo coming back?
That's John, I think.
But why? But how?
Is it? Let's attack the MacBook Air day today. That's the theme for today. Is attacking MacBook Airs.
Yes, but it was. Oh, and I'm frozen here. No, but the Air has always been what I've used, and it's never had the lag. It's true that the fans are on the whole time now. I don't know what's going on with it. But it's nail biting, that's for sure.
I know you like. You're a perfectionist.
Maybe the newer one do better.
How? What is that? Is that, John? That's because you have a speaker on or something, I guess.
No, it's not me that's doing the echo.
Let me see. Where is that coming? Oh, it's me. Wait a minute. It is me. Once again, I'm feeding. But how is that possible? Could somebody else on ZipDX say something?
Oh, hi.
Yeah. What happened? What did I just do?
My ZipDX is really kind of not.
What the hell did I just do?
Not a very good connection for some reason.
No, something happened. Because a few minutes ago it was working fine. What did I just do? Oh, it's because I'm. Yeah, okay, I got it. It's because I'm in the Hangout on the other thing now. What I need to do is mute myself here. Okay, this is going to do it, boys. Mute the audio here. I'm sorry, that was totally my fault. So here I am talking on one.
Muted.
I'm
on the ZipDX, but
ZipDianer.
It's impossible to talk, and when you hear yourself coming back 300 milliseconds later, isn't it?
Dianer. Arg. Okay, so anyway, we solved that. I'm sorry. It's because I'm on two computers and I was feeding it back. Terribly, terribly sorry. But you know what? That gives me a chance.
Two computers and feeding it back. I am very curious to know what the mechanics of bridging the Hangout to ZipDX are. To know whether it could be done with suitable non-PC or one PC and a phone kind of hardware.
Well, it's very simple, but you have to have a mixer with 2 aux buses. That's the only requirement.
Well, you can use the software mixer, can't you?
No,
for virtual audio things.
Really not going to work.
Now, two aux buses. The part. So you're basically sending a clean feed that is not itself, but everything else to ZipDX. You have to understand that this is migraine territory, at least for me. But I'll try to say it. I mean, I have done unlimited numbers of diagrams for myself, and it's still migraine. Oh, sorry, migraine time. But here's the thing. This mixer has an aux send 1 and an aux send 2, okay? And it has an aux return 1. These are effects returns, aux bus 1 and 2 return. So computer A is talking to ZipDX. It is returning through the effects return to the mixer. Why? Because otherwise there would be feedback.
it is getting its signal from an effects. No, it's getting its signal from bus 3.4 aux bus 1's output.
I think you need a diagram, Randy.
Well, but the fact is that even with the diagram, I get a migraine. The point is,
no, I'm getting this, and because
I think Michael, I think you know what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean,
because you have both send and return level adjustment, you have mixing control between ZipDX and the Hangout.
Right, and just to make it really agreeable, the famous MacBook Air that James hates so much doesn't have an input, so you have to use USB for audio input. So that's coming out through a converter from the mixer.
Right.
So there's one send. Let me see. You know what? Probably
here's what I'm envisioning.
Go ahead.
I'd like to run a little test, and I've got a sort of a decommissioned corporate laptop here, and I'm thinking I could rig a wiring harness to hook it up to a hard phone. You know, like a Polycom phone.
You could do that too. Yeah.
It would sort of be the headset, if you would, the wired headset on the phone. In fact, I've even got. Yeah, I could definitely do this. Not immediately, but I could definitely pull it together over the weekend and have a simplistic way of doing it.
Thing is, it's more.
Is how echo cancellation, how echo is avoided, and.
Well, the main point is it's harder than you think because everything else I've tried screws things up either from the lag. In other words, you have to play on the fact that when you're listening to ZipDX, you're not hearing yourself back through ZipDX. You know what I mean? So that's a signal that's clear. So my microphone, because I'm here, I mean, actually you wouldn't have to do this if you're just bridging, but my microphone normally is going out through the two buses to the Hangout and ZipDX. So that part's a no-brainer. It's pretty easy. You could almost do it with a Y cable and two computers. You can do it with a virtual Y cable and one computer. Right? That's what James was talking about.
I've got a goofy little hard phone with 2.5 millimeter analog audio jacks for mic and headset, a kind of PC style.
You could do that too. In fact, that's what I was going to try to do at one point in California, but the connector was one of the wacky, real small connectors. I didn't have one handy.
And so I'll try and set this up and see, because I think it would be nice. The bidirectional integration of the two is definitely preferable to one way.
But if they allowed the phone call to work, that would solve all the problems in one, because that does work. And if we're not broadcasting, if we're not on air, then now it's not HD, by the way, obviously, but the connection still does work to just call the server and then you're done with it. And that works well. There's no echo problem, as far as I recall. But otherwise, doing what I'm doing. By the way, the third computer is to do all of the little, the jingles and this stuff. Well, if you don't need that, then that's one computer that you don't need. That's one less. So you still need two computers, though, in my opinion, or some really good virtual software that doesn't have lag.
Well, I was thinking in terms of if you had a computer and a hard phone to do.
No, the same thing. Yeah, absolutely.
And another, you could use another client to be on the Hangout, and the bridge could be independent.
And more about what you pulled out in the slot for the strengths and so forth. And I was going to do just kind of a paste and edit and go ahead and.
Took me a second to find that, but there it is.
Where was that coming from?
Something on ZipDX.
On ZipDX?
Yep.
Really?
Yep. That was Poly 405.
Oh, Poly sounded quite nice.
Who's Poly? Let's see.
Poly,
that was a Hello, Poly 405.
That was me. I'm sorry.
Dave.
I have not.
Bloody hell. That's Dave Michaels. My God. There's going to be a virtual.
I'm always muted. I'm sorry. I thought I was muted. Sorry.
There's going to be a virtual fine of 25 euros sent out to you. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, my the MacBook is working very hard. The other thing is it's a quad core. My main computer is only a dual core. So the MacBook's actually more powerful than the main desktop.
I was the place that I was at until yesterday. I had a great big, about a 60-inch Samsung LCD TV in one of their conference rooms with a little webcam over the top of it. It was clear that they were using it to do Skype. It was a television station on the campus of the University of Alabama. And when I looked behind the TV, there was a Mac Mini mounted to the back of the Samsung, big Samsung TV. And so they were using the Mac as the host for Skype.
That's what I'm talking to ZipDX on, and this is an old. It's like a 3-year-old Mini. The new Minis are great. I suppose one day this thing will die, and I'll have to buy a new one. They're really fantastic, by the way. I really like it because you just bring your own, you put your own keyboard or whatever you need.
My Bing has bonged.
Kevin, I guess you're leaving.
My Bing has bonged. My plip has plopped.
Oh yeah, you're leaving, Jim. All right, you know what we're going to do? We're going to kill at least the broadcast part, because without James,
Oh, don't say that. You've got Kevin.
Yeah, well, Kevin's got to go too.
And doesn't he look so happy?
Because he's leaving too, I guess.
Well, Kevin.
No, actually, I was just waving back.
Oh, you were just waving. I thought you were leaving. If I kill the broadcast, we're still on though, as far as I know. So I may get kicked.
If you're still going in 20 minutes time, I'll join you from the train, but you probably won't be. You'll probably died.
Well, we'll be here. We'll be here probably, but not necessarily in public because. Let's face it.
In fact, I'll tell you what I can do that I haven't done before.
Yes.
We now have, thanks to the Olympics, we have Wi-Fi down the tube. So I could broadcast live from 150 feet down or wherever on the Northern Line. You'd enjoy that, wouldn't you?
You didn't have that before?
Not on the London Underground, no.
I can see the Daily Mirror now, and it's
really
London Wi-Fi down the tubes.
Yeah, well, anyway, we haven't done VUC from a London tube train yet, have we?
No, well, we could wait for that. However, we don't need to be broadcasting, so let me kill this because these things get too long and then nobody's going to watch this for.
Absolutely. Right, well, I'm off. I'm going to press...
Hey, Randy.
Yeah, John.
I just wanted to just tell you that I'm testing now a soft phone which is pretty accessible. And
Tell
the
us.
guy has done a lot of good stuff to make it accessible. Most soft phones I can't even use.
Right. What is it?
Windows-based one. It's based on FreeSwitch. It's
Of
called
course.
FS Client.
And how is it? Is it good?
What?
I tried the early release of that. Is it good?
I think it's great. Well, there's a new release of 1.2 something, I think. But the accessibility isn't in that yet. We're still fussing with it a little bit, but otherwise, if you don't care about that, and I want him to put more codecs into it, but otherwise, it's a really nice soft phone under Windows. It's based on FreeSwitch, and it works quite well.
Is there an installer for it that's a sensible installer, or do you have to hack it in